They saw it, and the moment they did, they were left without an answer. It's not that you did something wrong. It's that you finally revealed what you are, and what you are doesn't fit into the box they had waiting for you. This message was sent to specific people today. Out of 8 billion people on this planet, you are one of the very few receiving these words right now. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a choice. I saw you before they ever did. I named you before the world even had a category for what you are. What they discovered today, I knew before you were even born. Stay with me until the end. Before we finish, I'm going to give you a 3-step protocol to anchor this identity that's been revealed, so you don't lose yourself in the noise of those who didn't know how to hold on to you. It's not that you changed. It's that you stopped hiding. And the moment you stopped hiding, something shifted. The people around you went quiet in a strange way. Not the silence of someone reflecting. The silence of someone who no longer knows where to place you on the map they had in their head. You felt it in a meeting. You spoke with a clarity that no one expected, and the whole room just paused. It wasn't a pause of admiration. It was recalibration. Everyone looked, but no one said a word, and that silence carried more weight than any criticism ever could. Or maybe it was at the dinner table where someone whispered, quietly but not quietly enough, that you've been different lately. Different was the polite way of saying it. What they really meant was that the role they gave you, to let things slide, to just agree, to not take up too much space, you've stopped playing it. And that has everyone confused. You've been carrying the weight of watching the eyes of people who love you change. They aren't walking away. They're readjusting. It's as if they need time to figure out what you are, now that you've stopped being what they needed you to be. You went to bed recently with that feeling in your chest. Not guilt, not regret. Something more like the solid ground of someone stepping onto a new shore, still learning the weight of their own stride. You aren't wrong. You didn't overdo it. You didn't do anything you need to take back. You seek. You dedicate yourself. You do everything right, and yet abundance never comes. And the worst part, you start wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you're being heard up above, if it's meant for you at all. It's not a lack of faith or worthiness. It's a spiritual blockage that ordinary prayer alone cannot break. The Miracle Journal unblocks this in 21 days with a spiritual protocol that works exactly where your prayer doesn't reach. Along with the journal, you'll also receive as a gift the prayer guide and the Psalms manual with the most powerful sacred practices and texts to deepen your transformation. To claim your version of the journal, tap the link in the comments right below this video. Do it. You didn't do anything you need to take back. It's that space between no longer fitting where we used to be and not quite arriving where we belong, but you're still standing, and that alone says everything about who you are. Hitting the like button is your public amen. Heaven records what you confess out loud. Before I show you what they discovered, I want you to know what they saw was already there before they noticed it. I put it there, and what I plant, no one can uproot. In this video, you're going to receive 3 things. First, the spiritual truth behind how others are reacting. When someone who knew you one way doesn't know how to handle you anymore, it's not a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you've reached a place they aren't equipped to follow yet. Their discomfort is your confirmation, not your condemnation. Second, a 3-step protocol you can use today to anchor what's been revealed. Because the revelation without an anchor turns into confusion. You don't need more confusion. You need solid ground. Third, a declaration that will resonate tomorrow when someone looks at you like they don't know who you are anymore. You will know. And that changes everything. From confusion to clarity. From invisibility to presence. From shrinking to destiny. Stay until the end. Don't break the connection early. Close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you won't work if your attention is divided. I'm going to give you the signs. Each one has a physical, observable name. And for every physical sign, I'll tell you what it actually means in the plan that was designed for you. The first sign. You've started to bother people who never used to complain about you. This is the physical symptom. Not a fight. Not an explosion. A new coldness. A distance that came without an explanation. A text message replied to much later than usual. A presence that became rare without warning. You called it drifting apart. You spent time wondering what you did wrong. You replayed conversations, reviewed your actions, trying to pinpoint the exact moment something broke. What it actually is on a spiritual level is this. When you started occupying the space that was rightfully yours, the people who benefited from you playing small suddenly lost the room they had stolen. Their reaction isn't about you being wrong. It's about you stopping the surrender of what was never theirs to take. The second sign. Someone around you tried to force you back into your old role. It usually starts with a phrase, a memory of how you used to be. A question that sounds innocent, but is loaded with the intent to put you back in your place. Don't you think you're being a little intense? You've changed. You weren't like this before. You called it concern. You gave them the benefit of the doubt. You let that question itch in the back of your mind for longer than you should have. What it actually is, an attempt to restore the balance that existed while you were smaller than you were meant to be. Heaven gave you clarity on who you are exactly at the moment that pressure increased. It wasn't a coincidence. It was confirmation. The third sign. You had a moment of total lucidity in an environment that used to make you shrink. You know that place, that dynamic, that conversation that used to make you doubt yourself? You were there, and you didn't lose your way. You spoke up. You stood firm. You walked out of there with something that didn't come from you. You called it progress. Maturing. Learning how to handle it. This has a spiritual name. It's called identity stability. It's called grounding. And grounding doesn't come from an achievement. It comes from a revelation. It comes from something greater than you, deciding that you will no longer be moved from what you are. The fourth sign. You stopped apologizing for existing the way you do. You didn't become arrogant. You didn't become distant. You just stopped. Stopped softening your tone at the wrong moment. Stopped holding back your opinion before it reached your throat. Stopped modulating your feelings to protect the comfort of people who never protected yours. You called it being tired of faking it, running out of energy for the act. This sign is about where you were when heaven said it was time, not when you were ready, when it was time. The fifth sign. The right people started showing up in the most unlikely moments. Not a massive doors-opening miracle. Not a movie script. Just a message that arrived on the exact right day. A 5-minute conversation that changed the whole week. A referral that no one planned. A window opening exactly where there used to be a wall. You called it coincidence. Good luck. Things are finally flowing. What you called coincidence was confirmation. The plan is in motion. The pieces that need to be in place are being moved. Heaven doesn't announce what it's doing. It just does it. And when you stop and look back, the markers were already there. The next sign is the hardest one to hear. It's what the enemy has spent the most time trying to make you ignore. The sixth sign. You felt afraid of what was revealed, not afraid of others, afraid of yourself. Afraid that what's emerging is too big, that the expectations people are starting to project onto you will be impossible to meet, that if you walk in who you truly are, there's no way back to who you were, and that maybe, deep down, it's safer to be less. You called it humility, being careful not to get ahead of yourself. Spiritual caution, that fear is real, and it's not weakness. It is the exact sign that what's being revealed is the real thing. Small things don't scare you like this. Only the weight of a true calling produces this kind of vertigo. The fear of how big you are doesn't prove it's too much. It proves it's real. I know you saw the scale of what I put inside you, and I know that scale terrified you before it comforted you. That is as it should be. But what I plant doesn't depend on you being enough. It depends on you being obedient. Type "free" in the comments if this word reached you. Close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. This won't work if your attention is divided. There's a story in the book about a young man named Joseph. Joseph knew what he was. Not because he spent years on self-discovery. Not because he went on a retreat. But because heaven spoke in a dream and he simply received it. And when his brothers found out what he was, their first instinct wasn't to celebrate. It was to eliminate. Because when you discover that someone around you has a calling that transcends your own, the first reaction of the ego isn't honor. It's feeling threatened. They threw Joseph into a pit. Then they sold him. What they did to who he was in their language was, "This needs to disappear. This is taking up space no one asked for. This is revealing a difference that's uncomfortable just by existing." But what heaven places in someone cannot be sold or buried. It can be delayed. It can go through Egypt, through prison, through the forgetfulness of a cupbearer. It can go through phases that don't make sense in order, but it cannot be erased. What was revealed about you this week, in this phase, in this identity crisis that others accidentally triggered, was no accident. It was a move in the master plan. There's also an image from the physical world that describes this perfectly. Ordinary glass breaks at the first impact. Tempered glass goes through a process of extreme heating, followed by rapid, controlled cooling. High heat, then accelerated contraction. What looks like destruction is actually formation. The result isn't that it becomes rigid. It becomes resilient. And when it finally does break, it doesn't shatter into jagged shards that cut. It breaks into blunt pieces that don't hurt. The identity being revealed in you has gone through the heat. People who tried to mold you. Systems that tried to fit you in. Versions of yourself that were necessary until they weren't. All of that was the process of formation, not destruction. What you are now isn't a fragility that survived. It's a tempering that has arrived. And what is tempered by the right fire cannot be destroyed by the heat that comes after. Write in the comments if you identify more with Joseph or with tempered glass. Each of those paths says something about the process you've lived through. Let me stop for a full minute. Because so far we've talked about signs and stories, but I want you to hear what is objective before we get into the declarations. You walked through a process that produced revelation. You didn't ask for it. You probably resisted it at some point. The revelation came anyway because it doesn't depend on you being ready. It depends on the time being right. The people around you reacted. That is a fact, not a judgment. Reactions happen because something changed that they can't control and didn't see coming. You are still standing. That is also a fact, and not a small one. Standing after being seen is very different from standing before being seen. And here is who you are in the middle of all this. Before I give you the names, I want you to know that I've been carrying them longer than you can imagine. I held them while you weren't ready to receive them. I protected them while the world tried to replace them with smaller names. What you're about to hear isn't news to me. It's revelation for you. And revelation is just the moment where what has always been true finally finds a language. You are the breaking point. You came from a line of people who didn't say what needed to be said, who bent when they should have stood tall, who survived by becoming invisible to keep a peace they never asked to maintain. I saw every time you swallowed what you knew was true to keep a peace that wasn't yours to guard. I saw the cost of that in your body, in your sleep, in your voice that grew smaller. I kept all of it, and I decided that in you, the line stops. What this identity authorizes. You no longer need permission to name what you see. You are the point where the pattern breaks, where the story changes direction, where what was silenced for generations finally finds a voice and refuses to back down. You are the bearer of the unspoken. You've lived experiences that the available categories can't fully hold. Words felt too small. Explanations felt too rigid. You were more than the vocabulary of those around you could process. For a long time, you interpreted this as a communication failure, when it was actually an indicator of depth. I gave you perception before I gave you vocabulary. Not because I was careless, because the vocabulary you needed didn't exist where you were. You were the vessel before you were the messenger. Now both things are in the same place. What this identity authorizes: when you speak from who you are, not from what you've learned, you name things that the people around you have been feeling without being able to articulate. That isn't intellectual arrogance. It's a function. It's the reason you were placed exactly where you are. You are the one for whom rejection was redirection. Every rejection you faced, every room you weren't welcomed into, every relationship that couldn't sustain the weight of who you are, every opportunity that closed without a reasonable explanation, every time you were left out when it seemed like it was finally your turn, it wasn't punishment, it was redirection. I didn't reject you in the rejections you lived through. I moved you. Every closed door was me saying, "Not here." Every relationship that didn't last was me saying, "This person wasn't the companion for the stretch ahead." The path that remains after the doors close isn't one of consolation. It's one of destiny. What this identity authorizes. You can look at your history of rejection without shame and without resentment. They don't prove you are less than. They map out where you were never supposed to stay. Every door that shut was a direction, not a sentence. Write in the comments the name of the identity you recognized in yourself. Bearer, breaking point, redirected. And subscribe, because the next word will reach you already positioned in what was revealed here. The Identity Anchor Protocol. When who you are is revealed and the people around you don't know what to do with it, the danger isn't their judgment. The danger is that you might start managing your identity based on their reaction, making quiet adjustments, backing off a little, calibrating who you are by what they can handle, and not even realizing you're doing it. These 3 steps are here to stop that from happening. Step 1. Name what was revealed for yourself in writing, not for others, for you. 1 sentence, not an analysis, not a paragraph. 1 sentence that says what you know to be true about who you are since you stopped hiding. Write it somewhere you'll see it in the morning. Not in an app you only open when you're feeling good. On the mirror, on a piece of paper by the bed, on your lock screen. What was revealed needs to have a name in your own vocabulary, not just in the vocabulary of those who reacted to it. Step 2. Identify the voice asking you to retreat. It will show up in the next few hours, most likely, with a reasonable argument, with a legitimate concern, with the memory of a time you went too far and regretted it. That voice isn't your enemy, but it isn't speaking from the place of your calling. It's speaking from the place of the cost. Acknowledge that both exist, the calling and the cost. But don't let the cost determine how much of yourself you bring to the table. The cost doesn't cancel the call. It only describes the price of walking in it. Step 3. Do one thing today, small and concrete, that is consistent with who you are now. Not a public declaration, not a bridge burning. One small thing. A conversation you didn't put off. A decision the old you would have postponed until someone gave permission. A move that the person you were 6 months ago wouldn't have made without apologizing afterward. Identity isn't anchored in statements, it's anchored in acts that are smaller than they look. The sign that this protocol has been received isn't euphoria. It's not excitement. It's a specific kind of quiet. The quiet of someone who knows what they are and no longer needs to convince anyone. Type "received" in the comments if you are accepting this protocol. In the next 72 hours, 3 things will be launched against you. Not as a possibility, as a certainty. The first tactic is reasonable moderation. It will come as advice, maybe from someone who truly cares about you. The idea that you can be who you are, but at a lower volume. That you can take up space, but carefully, so as not to scare anyone. That the identity revealed is real, but it needs adjustment to be accepted by the right people. The tactic isn't to deny who you are. It's to convince you that who you are needs to be managed to be acceptable. And the moment you start managing yourself based on someone else's capacity to receive you, you've returned to the starting line without realizing you were talked into walking backward. The second tactic is the ledger of exceptions. It will appear as a memory. A time you said something and got it wrong. A time your intensity was more than necessary. A time the clarity you have about yourself was used in a way that accidentally hurt someone. Those memories are real. And the tactic uses real things. The enemy uses real memories to turn episodes into identity. One time you overdid it doesn't mean your essence is an overreaction. One time your strength came out wrong doesn't mean your strength is the problem. The problem was never that you were too much. The problem was not yet having the ground to carry what you are. The third tactic is the isolation of the plateau. When who you are is revealed and the people around you are left without an answer, you will go through a gap of isolation. Not because you've been abandoned, because the version of you that was easy to keep up with is gone, and the real version that remains hasn't yet found all those who will walk with it in the next chapter. This gap is real, and the enemy will use it to tell you that the cost of your true identity is permanent loneliness. That being who you are will cost you people. That it would be safer to be less so you don't have to be alone. It is not permanent loneliness. It is transition. And transitions have a timeline. And finally, the internal enemy. The voice that will say that who you are might be too much for the world you're in. That it would be easier to be less. That the people who had no answer might be right, and you need to review what was revealed. That the problem isn't the box that broke. It's that you're too big and you need to shrink. That voice doesn't deserve an argument. It deserves a decree. Type protected in the comments. The decree has been sealed. Before you close this video, I want you to do one thing. Drop your shoulders. Let your jaw relax. Take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out slowly through your mouth. Now let go of the weight of having to explain to anyone who you are. Let go of the tension of monitoring how others are processing what's been revealed. Let go of the need to calibrate yourself by the reception capacity of those who are still learning how to see you. Let go of the version of you that stayed small so no one else had to readjust. You don't need to carry that anymore. I saw the meeting where you spoke with clarity, and the room went silent. I saw the weight of that silence in your chest when you walked out. I saw the look in the eyes of the person you loved when they realized you were no longer what they needed you to be. I saw you leave that moment, not knowing if what you did was right or if it was too much. I was there. I know what it cost every time you stopped being small and stood up. I know what it cost not to apologize for the clarity in your voice. I know what it cost not to modulate what you feel to protect the comfort of those who never protected yours. And I tell you now, it was right. Their silence was the sound of a box breaking. The box couldn't hold what you are. It had to break. Not because you had to prove anything, but because what you are needs more space than they had saved for you. And that space, I have already prepared it. It doesn't depend on approval. It doesn't depend on being received. It already exists because I opened it before you ever needed it. What they discovered you are, I placed there before you were born. And what I plant does not retreat. It covers the mind that questioned if it was right to be who you are. It covers the relationships in transition because of what was revealed. It covers the timing of what's coming, which doesn't need to be rushed or delayed. It covers the identity that was revealed so it isn't negotiated away in the coming hours. Say it out loud now before you write it in the comments. It is done. I am not who I was when this message began. Amen. Type done in the comments if you received this word today. One word, that's all. And send this video to one specific person, not a group. To that one person you know is being revealed right now and still doesn't know what to do with what's appearing. Who is going through the discomfort of no longer fitting where they always fit and hasn't yet found their new space. If they want to go deeper, the link is in the first comment, waiting for them just like it waited for you. The next video continues where this one ended. It is done. You are not the same person you were when this message began. You seek. You dedicate yourself. You do everything right, and yet abundance never comes. And the worst part? You start wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you're being heard up above, if it's meant for you at all. It's not a lack of faith or worthiness. It's a spiritual blockage that ordinary prayer alone cannot break. The Miracle Journal unblocks this in 21 days with a spiritual protocol that works exactly where your prayer doesn't reach. Along with the journal, you'll also receive as a gift the prayer guide and the Psalms manual with the most powerful sacred practices and texts to deepen your transformation. To claim your version of the journal, tap the link in the comments right below this video.